My answer to the question, do the texts I have read in Module 1 reveal a country that I am proud to live in, is no. Upon being asked this question, I took into consideration all the lessons these Canadian texts I've been reading have taught me about our country. They have revealed the good, the bad, the pain, and the hope. I instinctively and immediately knew my stance on this argument because of the Indigenous text we have consumed in this module. Reading Letter to a Young Indigenous Journalist as a class, and reading the article Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls in Canada highlighted and expanded my knowledge on Indigenous struggles. These writings display the devastating mistreatment of our Indigenous population and the lack of support and attention they receive. Indigenous people in Canada experience inadequate housing and crowded living conditions, lower levels of education, poor health, and more. Canadian government has offered little assistance and half-hearted apologies for far too long, and the fact that these authority figures could act but haven't is a shame. We all must confront our colonial attitudes and thinking, or lasting change and reconciliation will not be a possibility. Reading Letter to a Young Indigenous Journalist showed me that Canadian citizens can spark change and support Indigenous people, even when the government neglects these issues. The following excerpt from the article proves that all Canadians need to do better. Quote, "You may be pressured to soften the blow of Canada's colonial history so as to not offend white audiences. As a result, the focus of the stories could shift from Indigenous people's realities to white people's ignorance. We should listen to Indigenous voices, hear them and support them, yet many citizens continue to live in ignorance." Two other texts that strongly influenced my position on the argument were Forever an Immigrant by Nassim Asghari and my own selection, Growing Up Biracial in a Small Canadian Town is Not Easy by Paula Suzuki. Both texts offered the experiences of life in Canada as a minority, just as Letter to a Young Indigenous Journalist did. In the poem Forever an Immigrant, the author illustrates the racism and exclusion she faced living in Canada, in her own country, and how she feels she has always been and always will be viewed as an outsider and someone who doesn't belong in Canada, which is the sad truth for many immigrants living here. An excerpt that grasped me was, quote, "Forever an immigrant, and I guess if you're the judge of it, I would be honored. Wouldn't want to be another token. And even still, our people happen to be a threat to the national security of this nation. Why else does Bill C-51 exist? And why has the consulate been closed for over 4 years, making it difficult for visits and migration?" Unquote. Bill C-51 has led to the misidentification of Canadians as terrorist suspects and has fueled stereotyping. This personal reflection of the authors shows that she, as a person of color and immigrant, feels unwelcome in her own country, which should not be tolerated. The last Canadian text I will draw upon is my own selection, Growing Up Biracial in a Small Canadian Town is Not Easy. Paula Suzuki talks about her identity struggles, displacement, and how she feels like an outsider as a half-Japanese, half-white person in Canada. She endured a lot of ignorance and racism from strangers and peers growing up here. Quote, "If you think we as a society have done enough to teach children about racism so that they won't say Asian slurs as soon as the teacher turns their back, you would be wrong." Unquote. This statement struck me and influenced my response to the original question because it shows while many of us think Canada has made excellent progress, we still have a long way to go in identifying systemic racism and how we can raise future generations to be better. In reflecting on all of the above reasons, I came to my conclusive position that no, the texts I have read do not reveal a country I am proud to live in. I won't feel comfortable answering yes to this question until all citizens of all backgrounds can live here without worry or judgment.